Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to NEN webinar. My name is Meenakshi, and on behalf of NEN and Vadhani Foundation, I would like to invite you all for this webinar and also introduce our guest speaker, expert speaker, Professor Soumya Chakraborty. Professor Soumya is an MBA from Satya Sai University and has a strong interest in the area of entrepreneurship. Professor Soumya is currently the manager, MDC and faculty HR and entrepreneurship at V School. He's an NEN certified entrepreneur mentor and he works closely with National Entrepreneurship Network to promote entrepreneurship. His areas of expertise is business model and business plan. He also regularly trains and mentors startup entrepreneurs. Before I hand over the floor to Professor Soumya, here are a few reminders for the audiences. You will be all on a mute mode. You may ask questions by typing in the panel provided. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on the session. I will be talking about building a winning business model. And if at any point of time you have a question, feel free to put it on the chat or, like Meenakshi said, address us so that we can look at it and answer it immediately. I will keep this session a little interactive because there are some questions I'm going to ask, and Meenakshi is going to help me to have them answered from your end. So here we go. So let's look at what the session is going to teach us. We're going to try and create some sort of awareness about what business models are and why they really are important with respect to a startup and a business. And then we're going to look at breaking down the business model into its key elements, as in what are the real building blocks of a business model. And finally, we're going to take an idea and see how, very simply, we can just convert it and lay it over into a business model. Okay? So what is a business model? You can say it is a method by which a firm adds value to its clients. All right? So when you have a model in place, what you're doing is creating some amount of value for a set of people who are going to pay some amount of value to purchase that value from you, right? Which is what the second point talks about, capturing value for itself, right? So as an organization, what a business model, in an organization, what a business model will do is it will allow you to transact, right? So very basically, a business model is how is the business running, how is the startup running, what is the fundamental process that is involved in having the product or service start off from that venture and reach out to the ultimate consumer or the client or the customer who's going to pick up that particular product or service. So if you look at the next section I've said, if you look at what answers what. So when you say, what is the product or service, right? When you say, what does a particular company give you? It gives you the product or service. Whom does it give this product or service to? That is what the market or the segment or the customers are. And the question of how does an organization deliver this value is what a business model will answer. It's a little difficult to understand in this manner, but this is just to give you a basic introduction. As we go ahead and understand some of the elements, it's probably going to help you to understand this a little better. Okay? Do we have any questions so far?
Professor, we do not have any.
Okay, I haven't got a response. Yeah, I will go ahead.
Yeah.
So here's my first question to all of you. Can you tell me one fundamental difference between these two companies whom all of us are very, very aware of, Domino's Pizza and Pizza Hut? They both deliver pizza, they both make pizzas and give us lovely pizzas and a lot of other good goody stuff, but then there is a fundamental difference, or up to recently there was a very fundamental difference between these two organizations. Can any of you tell me what that difference is?
Yeah. Rishikesh Chandelier says Domino's is known for its home delivery. Karthik says one focus on delivery for Domino's.
Excellent. Excellent. So wonderful. I didn't get both the names, but I think they've hit the nail bang on the head. So Domino's, if you all realize, is something or an organization which was more focused on delivering pizza to you. Okay. If you walk into a typical Domino's store, there is no ambiance, there is no hip hop around it, and even if you have to have the pizza in the store, it's given to you in a carton box, a typical pizza box, where you just flip it open and have it. As against a Pizza Hut, wherein it is a proper restaurant and the focus is more on providing you a good experience. Okay, so you see both of them delivering pizzas, making pizzas and delivering them to you, but they're delivering it in a very different way. So this is one example that I will again quote later, but I will go through a few more of them. My next one. What is the difference between Sonata watches, and the Fast Track brand? Remember, both of them are from Titan, but what is the fundamental difference between these two brands?
Target audience is different. Nitin says, and Supreet says, Fast Track is for teenage market. Yuvika says they reach out to different section or segment of market. Sonata is much more cheaper. Fast Track focuses on youth. It's much more fashionable and young for the young generation.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we've captured the essence of it. So you're very correct. Sonata is, if I may use a term, an Aam Aadmi watch, Aam Aadmi brand that a typical middle class person might look at, whereas Fast Track is very, very specifically targeted to the youth, to the hip crowd, right, who want to be stylish and in. Okay, again, if you look at it, same company, same watchmaker, Titan, but they have two very different sets of people whom they're targeting. Okay, I'll now move on to my third example. On the left-hand side, you can see a typical manufacturing setup, and on the right-hand side, you see a typical IT setup. Okay, or an information technology kind of setup. Again, what's the fundamental difference between the people in these two pictures?
It focus on productivity and ambience. Someone says the appearance.
Something specific to the kind of people that are working in these two organizations. What are the people on the left better at doing than the people at right, or vice versa?
The left are from manufacturing and the right is from a corporate office.
Yes, IT or services.
They're both demographically different, blue collar and white collar jobs.
Let me just hold on to that. So somebody said blue collar and white collar. What do you mean by the difference of blue collar and white collar? That's not a term that a lot of people use anymore, but still.
Manufacturing and service industry.
Or a little more. What is the kind of
physical labor, manual labor plus versus
Exactly. So I think if we are talking about manual labor on one side, and the other one is talking about intellectual labor.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have two categories of people, but two different kinds of resources being used. One, if you look at just the human being in each of these cases, the resource is a human being, but the aspect of the resource of the human being on one side is more physical labor, okay, and on the other side it is more of intellectual labor or intellectual ability, okay. So again, you can see a difference in the approach to these two different organizations. Right. So let me just quickly get on to now why I am talking about these differences or why I am taking these examples, and they're just so that we can have a slightly better understanding of the various elements that a business model will look into, right? So this is based on something called the Osterwalder business model canvas, okay? Most startup organizations like using this canvas because it's a very simple format that allows you to look at some of the very, very key building blocks to creating a strong business model, okay? And the elements, and let me read them out to you, I'm sure you can see them on the screen. There's something called the value proposition, which is foremost. And you have customer segments, you have channels, you have customer relationships, you have partners, activities, resources, and then of course the money bit, which is the cost and revenue. We will go through each of these elements to help us understand better what exactly they talk about or portray with respect to the business model. Starting off with the value proposition, okay? So the value proposition is, what is it? What is that extra bit? What is that extra value that we are delivering to the final customer, right? Is there a problem that my customer has that I'm trying to solve, okay? So let me go back to the example of Domino's versus Pizza Hut. What is the issue that Domino's is offering differently from Pizza Hut? Okay, Domino's is trying to target that person who wants to sit in the comfort of his house and still have a good hot pizza, whereas Pizza Hut is providing the value proposition of saying, come down, step out of your house, take a break, come into our restaurant. It's a nice and beautiful place. You can sit down here and enjoy a good hot pizza or good hot food along with your friends and family, right? So it's a very different value proposition that has been offered. What is the benefit, or what is it that you're offering which is unique and nice about your product or service is the first thing that you'll have to identify with respect to your business model. What is it that I am doing that somebody else is not doing or is doing differently? What is it that I am allowing my customer to enjoy? What is it that my customer will pay for and take from me? Okay, that is essentially what we mean by value proposition. Okay, I will stop after each of these points to take any questions because each of these blocks are very important. And if anybody has a question with respect to the value proposition, you could ask me now before I move on to the customer segment.
So Vinay, Swaraj wants to know, it's to do with his own business. He's got a creative textile startup, and he wants to know how can he, create a unique value proposition for himself, or how does he target the right segment of customers?
So it's quite difficult for me to be able to address a specific value proposition without knowing a little bit more about the business. But just to kind of give you an idea, so I've been working with an entrepreneur who came up with a very interesting idea saying silk as a textile, and since you're talking about the textile industry, silk as a textile has not been leveraged in spite of the fact that in India we love our silks. So she is starting a boutique which is offering very unique kind of designs in the area of silk. Okay, so that's her value proposition. She is going to have only silk, but not the regular kind of silk sarees or the Kanjivaram kind of sarees that you get, but something very different for a very specific target market. I'm sorry, I can't reveal more than that because it's just something that we're starting off and working with. But I'm trying to kind of get the idea across. You will have to understand, because you know your business best, is there something that my customer is looking for but has not yet got? Can I create that? Swaraj, should I be able to kind of answer your question to a little bit? And like I said, I cannot really answer individual questions as respective to a particular business. For one, the lack of time, and two, the lack of knowledge, because unless I know a little bit more about your startup, it would be unfair on my part to kind of give you any kind of advice in that direction. But you can always feel free to connect up with me later and we can take it further. Meenakshi, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Yeah, okay. So any other questions on the value proposition there?
There are actually lots of them. He wants to know, now that you're talking about examples, the question Shaikh Mohammed wants to know, what is the difference between Flipkart and Snapdeal? How are they different?
Okay.
They seem similar from these.
At the end of the day, all of them are e-tailers, as we call them, right? So e-commerce retailers, okay? But what Flipkart is trying to do different from Snapdeal may be in terms of a better delivery process. Or what Snapdeal is trying to do differently from Flipkart is maybe have a lot of discounts, okay? Just for your information, you have a team in each of these organizations which is specifically dedicated to doing R&D on finding out what is the discount offered on a particular product or particular category of products, R by R, okay? and they keep constantly updating their discounts and the offerings that they have based on that. So they are fairly similar in the way they're operating, but maybe where we could make an exception of Flipkart versus Snapdeal is maybe the customer experience, maybe the way the website is designed. Okay, how simple is it to navigate a Flipkart website? How simple is it to place an order? How good is the CRM system which captures all the information or gives me the right kind of prompts in terms of saying, you're looking at this book, maybe you're also interested in looking at this book. So it's got to be fairly unique. It's something, and especially in an e-commerce website-based startup of this kind, you have to be very, very clear in trying to create that difference, because otherwise, you're just one more of the many retailers who are there, and that's what's happening. The market is quite cluttered. You have Flipkart, you have Amazon coming in, you've got Snapdeal. I think there's another one which is coming up, Jabon, if I'm not mistaken, right? So you have a whole lot of it, but then they are now struggling to figure out what is the real difference that one has over the other, right? So that's what I'm saying. You have to sit down and really figure out what is that uniqueness you want to bring across to somebody else, okay? It's also important to try and see if you can create a uniqueness which cannot be very easily replicated. Otherwise, your competitor is going to kind of copy that very soon, and your uniqueness is going to go. Okay, what we typically call the secret sauce that you should have for your specific startup. Meenakshi, any other questions?
There are lots more actually. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
Avinash Naik wants to know, sometimes value proposition is not enough. For example, if we come up with a product which is important but not urgent, how do we convince the customer to buy it?
You'll have to help me with that question again. He's saying value proposition is not enough. How do you?
Sometimes, according to him, at times, the value proposition that he provides, the product he's providing is not self-explanatory or not enough.
Right.
If we come up with a product which is important but not urgent, like the need is not urgent, how does he convince the customer to buy it?
Okay. So I will kind of touch upon that a little later when I'm talking about the customer segments and the relationships that individual builds. But to answer it in a very basic level, remember, anything has to be sold. Okay. People didn't think an iPod was necessary until these guys, the Apple guys, pushed it into the market and they said, look, this is a really unique thing, very nice thing that we've got to come out with. Pick it up. Okay, and then it became a super hit. So a lot of times there is no space, there is no requirement, there's no need for it. So let me give you a live example. I'm working with an entrepreneur who has created a social platform for a certain category of associations based on certain needs he figured out that particular those associations have. But even though the product is excellent, the platform is beautiful, mind-boggling, okay, but the associations are very, very laid back, if I may use the term, to say, do we really need this? Is this really important? And it's almost been 6 to 8 months, and only now has one association come forward and said, okay, let's give it a shot, subject to the condition you give it to us free for the first 3 months, which he's agreed to do. So at times selling is hard. People don't realize, or let me put it this way, what you believe is a value proposition may not be a value proposition to somebody at the other end, but that's where your selling skills need to come in. So you may have a great product, but you also need great selling skills to be able to go out there and push it into the market.
Right. There's this very nice question that I've come across. Aman Verma, he wants to know what about he wants to ask about a designer merchandise e-commerce startup, how to create his its own value proposition. Can inventory-based model better than a marketplace model, and does that give any sort of leverage leverage over the value propositions available in the market by competitors?
Okay, I got a part of that question, but from what I've answered the question, I'm going to try and answer it. Remember, value is something that you're giving to the customer. Okay, no matter what you're doing, the customer should be able to see the value. So when you're talking about inventory versus the other kind of model, is it really making a difference to the customer? Okay, you could be an aggregator, you could be a stockist, you could be anything else, but when the customer wants it, is it available to him at the click of a button? What you do at the back end is your process. That is not your value proposition. Value proposition is what the customer sees it as. So if as an aggregator who doesn't stock any product, I'm able to deliver better value and faster value than somebody who has his or her own stock, then fair enough. I mean, I'm doing a good job, right? So it's ultimately what the customer is perceiving as the value that is more important rather than what you're putting it across as. I hope I've answered that question, Meenakshi.
Yeah. Moving on to the next question. Rishikesh wants to know, he runs a BPO with clients in US, Europe and Australia. His value proposition is cheap labor and on-time delivery of services. But the problem problem is there are lots of other firms doing the same thing. How can he
Absolutely.
differentiate and amongst the competition that is available?
So I would like to ask him, has he been following what the latest BPO organizations are doing? And if he hasn't, he should, because what's happening in the BPO industry is organizations are moving from providing good, cheap services to providing value-added services, which means if I am working with a client and handling a particular operation for him, I just don't stop at doing the process. I actually, over a period of time, learn from the process and give back to him saying, look, there is something more that you can gain out of this particular operation that you're doing if you do it this particular way. So you almost become like a consultant who's helping your client to reduce his or her cost or increase his or her revenues. And that's at the highest level. But that is essentially the value proposition that the BPO sector, which is now renaming itself to the BPM, Business Process Management. And that's the reason they're doing it. Because they are managing processes for you, managing processes for you better, so that your clients can actually make more money or save costs, depending on based on the consulting advice that you provide to them, and that is becoming a key differentiator today. Because if you look at some of the largest BPOs, everybody is offering exactly the same price, exactly the same service. Everybody is guaranteeing 100% accuracy in every transaction that they do, blah blah blah. So the value difference is what extra consulting advice can I provide to my client that's going to help his or her business to improve, and then in turn, therefore, improve my relationships and my business with that particular client.
Right. We'll take up two more questions. This question is from Yuvika Singh. She says, the Domino's pizza example, both are giving pizzas. How is there's not much difference. I understand one is providing it differently than the other. Is it is it so much of a value proposition, or there are more layers to value proposition as such?
It is. So there are two parts to it. So first, let me clarify the fact. This example probably held absolutely good until some time back, but now you have something called the PHD, Pizza Hut Delivery, which is a smaller express counter, which is set up recently, right, where the model of delivery is similar to what Domino's has. Okay, so they do express deliveries also because they realize that that seems to be a greater value proposition. But surprisingly, okay, Domino's hasn't opened Pizza Hut style restaurants. So, I mean, if you look at it very analytically, what you're basically trying to say is maybe the delivery model is a better option than the restaurant model, because, or it's a faster moving model than the restaurant model, all right, which is why probably Pizza Hut decided that, hey, this idea which Domino's is doing is really great. Coming back to saying, is that really value proposition? It is a part, it is one among the different value propositions that they're offering, okay, and probably one of the biggest ones, if I were to look at the Domino's model. Because like you said, yeah, both are offering pizzas, but how are you offering it? So imagine if you're an office, okay, until some time back, you would rather have a Domino's deliver a pizza to you than walk up to a Pizza Hut restaurant, sit over there, order. By the time the pizza comes and you have it and you finish it, you've lost about 2 hours. Whereas, if you kind of just call up Domino's and say, I want a pizza, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, they come and deliver it to you. You're sitting at your work table, continuing to work and munching on the pizza at the same time. So definitely there is a stark difference in the way the product reaches you and the amount of time you're able to save. Okay, so there are multiple aspects to it, yes, but overall there is a certain value that you're deriving based on the particular mode of the product or service being given to you. So that is essentially what we're looking at when we say value proposition.
Right. However, we're getting this question. I'm getting this question constantly from many people. They're asking what happens if they don't have a different value proposition than their competitors. There is nothing special or nothing stands out in their value proposition. How big a situation is it for any business?
So it's like this. If you've gone to a typical vegetable market, you'll find one person selling potatoes, and the guy next to him selling potatoes, and another third guy selling potatoes, and all of them are selling potatoes, which are pretty much the same. Okay, but if it's a large market where you have 20,000 people coming in on a day, fairly everybody will get their potatoes sold. So they really don't have to worry about giving a value proposition. But if it is a smaller market, okay, if the number of people coming in are less, all right, then people are going to walk up from one cart to the other cart and say, okay, who's giving me the best price? Who's got the best quality of potatoes, right? Who's giving me a free carry bag probably to carry a whole sack of potatoes? Small little things that make a difference. So if you don't have a majorly differentiating value proposition, then make sure you're in a market which is large and where there is enough scope for one more Me Too kind of organization to exist. However, if you are in a market which is fairly niche, where the total market size is not too large, then it might make sense to definitely have a value proposition. Also, over a period of time, a value proposition will come into the picture. Okay, just like I gave the example sometime back about the BPO sector. So over a period of time, everybody came to a particular level of stagnation and said, we are all providing exactly the same thing. That's when somebody took the extra step and said, okay, can we provide a consulting service in addition to the BPO, and created a value proposition. Okay, and by the time he had made that leap, it probably took 2 or 3 more companies some more time to reach that level. Okay, and maybe he's thinking of the next value proposition already. But that's the whole point. If the market is large, you might survive for a period of time. But remember, there will be a lot of other people also coming and saying, hey, take my potatoes, take my potatoes, take my potatoes. How you differentiate is what is unique that you can provide as a part of it. And remember, the product by itself doesn't have to be unique. Something associated with the product, like the service itself, can also bring about that sense of value proposition. Okay? I hope I've been able to answer that question, Meena.
Yeah. We'll move on. If questions keep coming in, we can take it up at the end of the session.
Sure. Okay. So from here on, I'm going to talk about the next part, is the customer segment. And when I say customer segment, some of you already kind of use that term when we're talking about the Sonata versus fast track example. And essentially, we're talking about who is that person. Can I define what my typical customer will look like? Okay. And remember, I use the term customer and not consumer. And let me just kind of bring about a small sense of differentiation between what a customer and a consumer is. A customer is somebody who is paying the money to buy your product or service. And the consumer is somebody who's actually using the product and service. And in a lot of cases, the two of them can be very different. A simple example is a Johnson's baby shampoo. Okay. Remember, the customer is the parent, the mother or the father, who's paying to pick up that bottle of shampoo. But the end user is that little baby on whom that shampoo is being used. Okay. So when you are defining customer segments, okay, you need to be very clear about who is going to pay you and who's going to use it. Okay. Remember, not only the person using it, but also the person paying for it has to be convinced or has to agree that yes, there is a certain value that I'm deriving out of this particular product or service. And therefore, the second most important part of the model is to be able to very clearly define who my customer segment is. There are certain products or services which might cater to multiple segments. Okay. in that case, what we normally suggest is probably pick up one or two of the segments that you believe to be the strongest or which have the highest potential, and start targeting that particular segment. Once you have some kind of firm footing on those segments, you then start spreading out into trying and targeting some of the other segments. If you don't do that, and if you try and, what we typically say, keep all the people happy all the time, you might just land up not keeping anybody happy at all. And the best example of that is Kingfisher Airlines. Okay? Because one of the things that Kingfisher Airlines did terribly wrong, among a lot of other things, was it never really had a defined market segment. The business class guy was a little concerned as to why the ticket prices were only 5,500, 6,000, when a business class offering should be somewhere at least in the range of 10,000. I'm just taking a random figure. And the economy class guy was saying, look, I don't want a TV on board. I don't want beautiful air hostesses. I don't want food. Just get me from point A to point B on time. And well, Kingfisher wasn't doing that. I mean, if all of you know, Kingfisher had a very, very poor sense of timing. Their flights were always delayed. There were technical snags, blah, 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 blah. So it really didn't have any kind of a definition as to whom it was targeting. Was it the business guys? Was it the economic guys? Was it the families? Who were they targeting? As against somebody like Indigo Airlines. And why is Indigo Airlines so successful? Because they're very clear. They are saying we are in the business of economically and punctually flying you from point A to point B. You could be business class, you could be the Sultan of Brunei, but when you get into our flight, you're just one more person on that flight. You have the same seat, everything is just the same. Get in on time, reach the other point on time. I do not differentiate. Anybody is welcome onto my flight, right? So actually what they did was, by focusing on one section of saying we're probably targeting the economic kind of guys, they actually were able to draw in a larger number of segments. Whereas Kingfisher did exactly the opposite. By trying to keep everybody happy, they lost track of where they were going and completely, lost the business, lost the whole game. Okay. So the second very, very important part for all of you in constructing your business model is to have a very, very, very clear definition of who you are targeting. So just to give you another live example, I'm working with somebody who is looking at starting up a very special kind of cab service. And he said, look, I'm very clear. I'm targeting people who are traveling at least 15 kilometers to work every day, who are 30 plus years of age, which means they at least have 7 to 8 years of experience, and therefore are in an income bracket of at least 12 to 15 lakhs per year. Because if they're not in that bracket, then they cannot afford the kind of charges that I'm going to levy on them for my taxis. Okay, so a very, very clear idea of who is going to subscribe to my service. Having said this, I also want to kind of make it clear that a lot of times we assume a particular category of people will be my clients or my customers. But as we begin to run the product or service, you see there is another category of people who are more interested in it. Okay? And you slowly begin to realize that the way you had assumed, or the segment that you had cut out, is not the right segment. And there's nothing wrong about it. Now that you have a clarity of who is taking your product more or taking your service more, you now start focusing on that particular segment and seeing how you can benefit them, how you can create greater value for them, and make that your primary segment in terms of your customers. Okay, so that is the second element which is there in the business model, which is called customer segments. Meenakshi, I'll probably take one or two questions max so that we can keep the timing in place.
Sure. Or we can do one thing, we can move ahead and we can take up the question during the Q&A.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that if that helps. Okay, the third thing that we're looking at is called the channels. Okay, so the channel is very simply a path, all right, and the path of taking your product or service to the customer, right? You have a product, you have a service, how do you want to take it across to the customer, right? So one example I love to quote in this, and though it's a little old in that sense, but if you remember Dell as an organization, okay, they were the first people who cut out all intermediaries between themselves and the final buyer. Okay, I'm sure most of you are aware that Dell came up with this model where they said, get onto our website, give us the specifications, and we will deliver the laptop or the PC to you directly. Most other hardware makers, computer makers would have a proper channel in terms of they would have a set of retail stores, or maybe they would have specific brand stores where their products would be available, and some part of it was sold online. But Dell as an organization was the first one to realize that if you cut down the size of the channel, you can make a bigger margin. So all that commission which was going to some of the middlemen just came back all the way to Dell. Okay, so that's a very, very beautiful example of a channel, in terms of how to create a really good channel. With channels, one thing you also need to remember is it's quite possible for a startup to look at multiple channels. Okay, so if you take any FMCG product, for example, right, there could be 2 or 3 channels through which you are helping to reach the customer. One could be a direct sales. One could be through retail shops. One could be through large format stores. Okay, you could probably even have things like place an order on a call, so telephonic kind of channel. So you have multiple channels available, right, for each product or service, and you need to define what is the best way that you want your product or service to be able to reach to your customer. Okay, and like I said, you could have more than one channel or a mix where, let's say, 80% of your product is delivered in a particular channel and the remaining 20% is delivered in another different channel. So let's say if you look at Dell even today, more than 80% of their sales still happens online, and a small percentage of it is through retail. In fact, it's not in retail shops. They have one particular retail shop which is there in their office in Bangalore, and it's available at some other retail stores. But they still strongly hold on to the channel of online marketing, online sales for the delivery of their laptops and computers to the final customer. So you could have a mix and match, but ideally you need to figure out what is the best way you want to reach out to people. Okay, so that is what we're looking at when we say channels, or the path from taking your product or service from your doorstep to that of the customer. The next interesting element of the business model is the relationships. And here we are saying, you've thought of a value proposition, you've figured out there's a customer segment, you also have figured out how you're going to reach that customer. But once that customer has purchased your product, what can you do to make him hold on to you? Okay, make him want to come back to you a second time. Can you build a relationship with that person? Can you kind of create a bond with that customer? Okay, and some of the simplest examples of this are the loyalty points. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you, shop in shops like Shoppers Stop or Lifestyle or Max Supermarkets, or if you go to bookstores like Crossword. Okay, they all have something called a loyalty point. Or another thing that's doing really good business these days is payback, your payback card. Okay, which are associated with your ICICI bank cards or your HP outlets. Okay, so what happens every time you transact, you win back certain points which you accumulate over a period of time. So you want to keep going back to that particular store because you're accumulating points for which you probably get some kind of free gifts or something of that kind over a period of time. But there is a small carrot which they keep hanging, which makes you want to go back. So for example, if my friends will tell me that they're planning to give me a gift voucher of Shoppers Stop, I say, hey, hang on, don't give me Shoppers Stop, give me Lifestyle, because I have a Lifestyle loyalty card. And I would rather go back to Lifestyle because I know if I make some purchases from there, I'm going to earn a few extra points, right? So what kind of these unique ideas, these unique elements can you add to the experience of somebody buying your product or service that will want them to keep coming back and building a relationship with you? Remember, once you have a customer, it's very, very important to retain that customer. Okay, the cost of acquiring a new customer is much higher than the cost of retaining the old customer. Okay. So once you have somebody who's bought your product or service, can you do something to help that person hold on and stick on to you as their primary vendor for that particular product or service? Okay. All right. I'm just going to go ahead, like Meenakshi said. I know some of you might have a lot of questions, but we will take them all at the end of it.
Yeah, all the questions are there. We'll ask at the end.
Yeah. So moving on, we are going to talk about two more very critical elements of the business model. One is the key partner, and the other is the key activity. So what we have seen so far has been the customer side to it, which is the external element. What I do or what I need to understand with respect to the customer, the outsider to my business. What we're going to see now on is more internal to my business. What I need to understand for my startup, for my venture to run and function properly internally. Okay, and the first among that are my partners. Okay, let's face it, no startup can survive by itself. You need a proper environment. You need an ecosystem around you. You need people around you to help you to get your venture up and running. Okay, so you will have to identify who are your key partners. One of the simplest definition of a partner is vendor. Okay, anybody who is a vendor is probably a partner for you because he or she is supplying you important raw material that you're then processing into a final product. Okay, so suppliers are one of the most key category of partners we call, but you could have others as well. Okay, so what a partner essentially does is provide you something on which you further build to create a final product or service. Okay, or they could provide a support and assistance to the completion of your product or service. So let me give you an example of both. In the first category, like I said, if you are manufacturing a product, let's say you're creating gift boxes, okay, the person who is supplying you a category or typical kind of wood is maybe a key partner for you because you need that kind of wood coming in from this person to be able to design the right kind of gift boxes. Okay, so he is somebody who is providing you something on which you're building further and creating a product. The other category I said is somebody who is helping you to finish off the completion of your product or service. So here let me give you the example of a lot of these online retail stores, or let's say for that matter, a lot of these people who do deliveries for you. Remember, most of these organizations don't have their own delivery network. Okay, what they do is they bring in the sale and then the delivery part is outsourced to another partner, right, who on a daily basis is given, you have to deliver A, B, C, D, E to so-and-so area, so-and-so places, so-and-so people. Because the logistics, supply chain management, delivery model is a fairly complicated stuff in itself. So if you want to be more, focused on your core product, okay, that you're creating, you then, so I'll go back to the example of these wooden boxes. So let's say you have an online store where you can sell these wooden boxes. So your first key partner is this guy who's supplying you the wood to make the boxes. Then you've made the wooden boxes, and then let's say you have another partner who actually goes out there and ships the products to all your customers. So on your website, you keep getting orders. You take down the addresses, take down the orders, and you give that to your next partner, who is basically a supply chain guy who will go over there and supply these products to your end customers. So you see how a partner is allowing you at a beginning stage to be, is being a support for you at the beginning stage and also support for you at the end stage where you are making a living. So as a part of your business model, you will need to figure out who are these 2 or 3 critical partners with whom you want to create a long-term partnership, because these are people who are critical to your business. Okay, my stationery supply guy is a supplier, but he's not critical to my business. Okay, if he doesn't supply me sheet, I can just go down to the next stationery shop and buy, a few white sheets. He's a supplier, but he's not a critical partner. He's not a key partner. A key partner is somebody who, if that guy makes a mistake, then your business will suffer. Okay, so he's somebody who's very, very key to you. Can you identify a couple of people who you will define as your key partners? Okay. And parallel to that, is what we call the key activities. Okay. Now that you have defined who your partners are, do you very clearly know what you're going to do yourself? Okay, so let me go back to this wooden box example. I know I have a partner who will supply me good raw material. I know I have a partner who will supply the finished goods to my customer. So what do I need to do? My key activities? Well, A, let me have a website which is maintained properly from which I can get the orders. B, let me process those orders and understand what are the kind of orders I'm getting. C, based on those orders, let me make those gift boxes. And B, supply them to my other partner who will ensure that they get supplied further. So these are probably my 4 key activities that I may need to do. So can you identify what are those elements, right, which are absolutely necessary to the sustenance of your venture? And remember, they're not necessarily only with respect to the creation of the product and service. Like I've mentioned over there, for some startups, the customer relationship could be a very, very key activity, because that is what keeps what we typically say repeat business keeps a business running. So a customer relationship could be a very, very critical element for that particular venture. Or for somebody else, the distribution channel could be a very, very critical element. Okay. So you have to understand what are those activities which are absolutely essential, which are the lifeblood of your organization, without which your venture will not be able to carry on, without which your product or service will not be able to reach the final customer whom it is intended for. Okay. Finally, we look at key resources. Okay. So you saw in the previous slide, we spoke about key activities. So you need resources who will do these activities. So that is essentially what your key resources are. So if you are running a restaurant, one of your key resources will be a chef. Okay? Because without a good chef, you can't have a good restaurant. Maybe another aspect of your key resources will be the kind of kitchen equipment and machinery that you typically see in a restaurant. Because without that particular resource, you really can't make the kind of food. Okay? So your resources are those raw materials. Okay, raw materials is maybe not the right word to use, but if I will use it as an analogical kind of word, those basic building blocks without which you cannot carry on the activities which allow you to, create the product or service that your venture is out there to make. Okay, so this is what defines the key resources. You need to be able to understand this. So far we have seen the 7 elements of this particular model, which 4 which essentially spoke about the outside part of it, the value proposition, the customer segment, the channel, the customer relationship, and on the other side we've seen key partners, key activities, and key resources which are from internally, or which are the inside part of the organization, without which my venture cannot really continue. The final 2 pieces in this model are 1, the cost structure, and 2, the revenue structure. So cost structure is very, very simple. What are the costs to my organization? Okay. And here I need to kind of make a small differentiation. When I say a cost, I am looking more at running costs. Okay. Setup cost and then running costs. So you see, key activities, key resources, something that keeps the business running. Okay, and it can vary from business to business, venture to venture, depending on the kind of product or service that you are offering. Okay, so essentially, a cost structure is what is the cost that you are incurring for you to run the business, and exactly the opposite of that is your revenue structure, which means what is the kind of money that is coming into my organization. How often is the money coming in, right? So you have certain organizations which get paid much later after their product is bought. You have some organizations where you immediately pay over the counter. Okay, you have some kind of products which a customer will buy once in maybe 6 months to a year. You have some kind of products which are bought every second day or every third day. So what is your billing cycle? How often is your money coming back to you? How many days of a debt or credit do you have to keep? Okay, all of that is basically what the revenue structure is talking about. So the cost and revenue structure together will kind of give you a sense, okay, of what we refer to as working capital. And working capital is basically a term which talks about how money is flowing in the business. Where is it coming in from? How is it going out? Where is it coming in? How is it going out? And what is the duration it is spending in that cycle? Do I have enough money to continue my business, right? If I have spent 1 lakh rupees to create a product and I'm going to sell it for 1,50,000 in the market, right? I go and sell it for 1,50,000, but I know that 1,50,000 is going to come back to me only after 1 month. So for 1 month, what do? Do I just keep sitting over there? No. I will have to ensure I have a few more lakhs so that while that other 50,000 comes back, I can still keep making products which cost me 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh each. Okay. So that is the extra amount of money that I will have to plan for. Okay. So that is essentially what the cost and revenue structure together look at in terms of how the money is coming in and how the money is going out of the business. All right. So these together, if you put the whole thing together, this is what is a diagrammatic representation of this. This is a creation of somebody called Jam, and I have borrowed it from him. So at the center of the whole thing is the value proposition. Okay, let me just get a highlighter. Yeah. So this is your key central element, which is the value proposition. All right. This is whom you have to attend to, which is your customer. Now, how this value proposition is delivered to your customer will define the channel, and how your customer keeps connected to this value proposition will define your customer relationship. This is the customer-facing end of it. Coming here, to be able to give this value proposition, who are the key partners I need to tie up with? What are the key activities I need to perform? And what are the key resources that I need to perform these activities, right? These three are the internal, so to say, elements of running my business to be able to reach out to my external customer. And both of them are based on a very important part of life, which is money, okay? Which is, these are my costs and these are my revenues. So as you can see, costs are more a part of the internal running. Revenues are what comes in from the customer, okay? The customer is giving my revenue. My activities are making me spend money, okay? So this is the overall block of the business model. So when you are starting out a venture, if you have answers to at least most of these people, most of these blocks, then you can rest fairly that, okay, you have a strong business model in place. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take an idea and say how you can think a little bit and just create a very basic business model around it. Okay, so I've created the structure over here, and it's pretty much the same thing. So value proposition, customer relationships, channels, customer segments, activities, resources, partners, cost, and revenue streams. And this is the business model canvas of butter chicken. Okay, so I will take it step by step for you to kind of understand how each component relates to the other. So that's some lovely looking butter chicken, and to my audience who are vegetarian, you can just replace the chicken with paneer. It's going to work absolutely fine that way as well. So what is the value proposition that my venture is trying to give? It's trying to create a ready-made or ready-to-eat butter chicken, okay, or butter chicken which can be packaged, preserved, and eaten later. Okay, that is the fundamental value proposition that I'm trying to provide to my prospective customers. Now, I just want to make one thing very clear. What I'm presenting to you is at a very, very basic level, just to stimulate your thought process. Okay. If this were a real business model, I would put a lot more thought into creating the value proposition. This is done in a very simple language, in a very basic way, just so that you are able to connect the dots and understand. Okay, right. So now that I have the value proposition, let me look at who could be my customer. So here, I've just got a very basic idea of saying anyone who likes to eat chicken is probably a customer for me, but that's probably still a little broad. I might want to eventually focus it down further. What are the channels? Okay, so I could probably have some shops of my own. Okay, I could go to supermarkets and have packets of my ready-to-eat butter chicken. I could look at daily need stores, or what we call kiranas. I could look at online ordering. So I could have a website where you could go and order and I could deliver it to you, or I could have a call center, okay? Or I could have it done as a part of on-site deliveries or newspaper inserts. So a multiple category of channels which are available to me to be able to sell my particular product across to a customer. Now, what kind of customer relationships could I build? Maybe I'll have a website and a Facebook page for feedback. Okay. So today, most FMCG products, if you look at it, they have their own Facebook pages where people go ahead and comment, and there's a lot of exchange that happens in that. Okay. I could create maybe some kind of community of chicken lovers. Okay, where they share a lot of chicken recipes. Okay. I could probably start off some kind of loyalty program. You know, if your consumption is X number of packets in a month, then wow, you get some gift or something of that kind. All right. So that's some set of customer relationships that I'm looking at. So this part is fairly filled. Let me come back here now. Sorry. What kind of resources would I need? I would probably need good chefs, cooks, maybe a modern kitchen, and some very good raw material. Okay. So be it chicken or be it paneer, I will need somebody who's going to probably give that to me. And what are my activities? I will have to purchase a lot of these raw materials, cook them, probably conduct some quality checks, because food is a very, very dangerous area. If you don't have the right quality checks in place, you could end up going to jail. And delivering the product. So here, you know, in this example, I've decided that I'm going to take responsibility of delivering. I'm not going to probably give that out to somebody else. And then, of course, maybe in an intangible activity that I have to do is to create the brand. Okay. Partners, I could look at sales partners, I could look at delivery partners. Okay. So here I have put down delivering, and here I'm saying delivery partners. So maybe some part of the delivery I might want to keep to myself, some part of it I might want to give to delivery partners. Okay. Again, sales partners are people who will help me sell the product. Okay. It could also be people who are helping me with things like creating my website. It could be people who are helping me create the brand. So these could be the typical partners that I have. I also need a set of suppliers who are going to give me good quality chicken, okay, or paneer and other ingredients. So you typically want to tie up with a dairy farm maybe for the paneer, you want to tie up with the poultry farm for the chicken, and they have to give you a constant supply of good quality chicken. You've got to be sure that the quality coming in is very good. How will I make my money? What will be my point of revenue? Okay, so it's basically going to be from sales, right? I sell the product and I make money. And that sales from various sale points, which means from the supermarkets, from the daily needs stores, from online ordering, from any of these formats, and the money that comes in is the revenue for me. And what are my costs? Well, I have to pay salaries to people. There's going to be a cost setting up the kitchen where this whole thing is manufactured. So the kitchen is probably going to be more like a factory where the butter chicken or the butter paneer is manufactured. And some amount of costs to be incurred in terms of my branding. So I've said I want to create a brand, right? So some amount of cost going into sales and marketing. So at a very preliminary level, this is what my first draft of the business model canvas could look at. Maybe if I thought a little bit more, you know, some ideas might pop up. For example, I also might want to target some amount of, you know, people who may be vegetarian but cook food for non-vegetarians. All right. So you have homes where half the family is vegetarian, the other half is non-vegetarians. So you might also want to look at that category of people. All right. Okay. In terms of value propositions, I could also probably provide some cooking lessons, videos, and recipes. Okay. I could probably have some online video lessons. I could start a YouTube channel, okay, or do some live cooking classes as a format to deliver my particular product. I could look at cooking trainers, okay, people who come in and train my cooks to, you know, make new kinds of new flavors, new categories of butter chicken. Provide some cooking lessons as a separate activity. So venue partners, okay, so for example, if I'm going to So I spoke about having classes, okay, live coaching classes. I might need to look at somebody who's going to provide me a space to conduct, maybe a studio which I can hire out. He could be a key partner for me, where I have a weekly slot booked for me to come and record my particular cooking class or whatever it is, or online video partner. So maybe YouTube is like an online video partner for me. Okay, and I could probably make some money, some additional revenue out of these cooking classes. Okay, and maybe for that I'm also going to incur some additional amount of cost. So if you look at it, the pink sheets are like the first level, the green sheets are the second level. And as you keep thinking and as you keep discussing and as you keep pondering, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to slowly but surely start narrowing down on what exactly is the value proposition, who exactly is your customer, what exactly do you want to do in terms of relationships, who are your key partners. Each of them will have to go through iteration after iteration in terms of your thought process to be able to create a comprehensively strong model on which you can then start working in terms of executing the venture or the startup idea. Okay, so this is essentially what a business model canvas looks like, right? And like I said, 1 hour is probably a little too tight to go any deeper into any of these aspects. I'm open to any kind of questions right now from any of the particular areas. And Meenakshi, I request you to help me in terms of taking questions.
Sure.
We could probably have questions for the next about 10 to 15 minutes from my side. Yeah?
Sure. We'll start with the first question asked by Mr. Veerappan. He is running a hardware startup. The revenue model is by selling a hardware product, where the product is product's life cycle is 5 years. He's asking what way can he create a customer relationship model, or how can he create a customer relationship?
So my first clarification, when you say hardware, you're talking about what kind of hardware? IT hardware or regular hardware?
I'll have to ask Mr. Veerappan.
Yeah,
it's a IoT product, IT product.
IT products, okay. So maybe the simplest thing for you to do is start an annual maintenance contract, right? Or probably offer free maintenance for the first 1 year. You could have somebody, from your store go in, right, on a regular basis. So maybe once a quarter or once in 6 months. Maybe first up, just do a call and check if the machine is working fine, and then go ahead and do a basic amount of cleaning kind of services, just to check everything is in place and come back. Or like I said, at the second level, get into something like an annual maintenance contract and say that you go and kind of service it at specific intervals. A third thing you could also look at is maybe creating some kind of a small database of your customers and updating them about saying, you've got this particular screen from me, but there's this new screen which has come out, which is really good, and since you're my premium customer, the market price is 4,500 rupees. I'm giving it to you at a discount of 3,500 rupees. Would you be interested? Make it an exchange offer. Give me your old screen, take this new screen for 3,500 rupees. I mean, an IT hardware product is something that keeps getting recycled every 4 to 5 years, right? So, something of that kind is what would be the typical category of relationships that he could build up with his customers.
Right. Ashish Taneja, he has a business of manufacturing and supplying hotel and home linen. He started 2 years back. Till now, he has been manufacturing for suppliers to leading hotels of India. Right now, he's stuck at supplying the same directly to the customers. What he says is his leads rarely converts to sale. So, is there something he can do in his value proposition, or is there something he can do to change that particular situation?
So let me understand this question right. What he's saying is he has a set of customers and he's supplied to them for the last 2 years, but he's not able to prospect new customers, new clients. Is that what it is?
He has 2 segments of customers. One is supplying directly to the hotels. Another one is to home, as in singular clients like buyers. So now he has problem in tackling or converting the leads from the second category, which is the individual buyers, not the hotels.
Okay, so the retail sales is where his issue is coming in.
Yeah.
And he wants to understand if there's something he can do unique to the value proposition.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fairly strongly competitive market which has a big organized sector. So you have right from the Bombay Dyeing kind of guys, right up to you know, a very unorganized sector where you have local make people who sell it out in the you know, right on the streets kind of thing. So it is a tough market to crack, and I'll be honest, I can't think of anything that's coming top of mind right now in terms of added value proposition that he could create. But maybe, you know, in terms of just reaching out to a few of them, he could leverage on the fact that he already has a strong supply to some of the top hotels, and when these people go and visit the hotels, you know, it's essentially his product that they are using in those particular hotels. But it's tough. I mean, I'm not going to try and give an answer directly to that, because we probably need to put some more thought into it in terms of what really could be a value proposition for this particular market. It's fairly crowded, a lot of competition. So maybe nothing that comes top of my mind right now in terms of an added value proposition to that.
A furthermore discussion probably might help.
Yes, might just be able to help us.
Right. Dr. Pandyan wants to know how can he differentiate his B school from others apart from excellent pedagogy, teaching, infrastructure, environment?
Okay, one of the things that a B school has to propagate is its placements, and you know, being from a B school environment, I think that's one thing we all realize, that the quality of your placements goes a long way in terms of defining the kind of students you're able to attract. That's point number one. The second thing which I think works very strongly for a business school is the amount of corporate connect that you have. And I'm saying corporate connect is separate from placements. Placement is an activity where somebody gets placed in an organization. A corporate connect is the number of people you have visiting your business school from the industry for various events, right? These could be, you know, simple conferences, these could be guest sessions, these could be some kind of training sessions or any of those kind. The amount of visibility that you create for yourself in the corporate section, corporate sector, will in turn also impact the way your students are able to absorb from them, and therefore the word of mouth spreads in terms of how you are strongly connected. Especially as a business school, the connect to the corporate sector is very, very important. So I think that those are the two areas probably Dr. Pandyan could look at.
Right. Mr. Verma wants to know what's the difference between key partners and key resources?
Okay, that's a good question. You know, in fact, thanks for that question, because there's one point I want to talk about on that point which got missed out. A lot of times the lines are a little blurred. Okay. So at times a resource could also be categorized as you know, a partner, and vice versa. Okay, so I will go back to the concept of the delivery element. Okay, for let's say a restaurant. So let's say you have a restaurant where you have a setup of 3 or 4 delivery boys, and you have you know, a small system. So then that becomes your own individual resource. Okay, you have, let's say, 5 bikes, you know, fitted with these warm boxes and all of those things, and you have a strong database and probably some amount of mapping or networking device, which then allows you to, you know, deliver through the quickest roads, the fastest ways, and things of that kind. That is the resource. Now, if there was somebody who would tell you that, why are you breaking your head over delivery, right? You concentrate on cooking, and you tell me what has to be delivered where, and I will do it for you, then that is a partner. Okay, he is doing exactly the same thing for you. He probably has a designated set of 4 or 5 bikes with 4 or 5 delivery boys with similar kind of software, similar kind of setup. The only difference is his 5 boys stay at your shop and do the delivery for you from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night, and 10 o'clock they go back. They are not a part of your organization. They are a part of an organization of your partner, but he is almost working with you like your own resource, right? So that's the difference between a partner and a resource. And like I said, quite often the lines tend to get a little blurred, okay, because a resource, a partner could become almost like a resource for you. Okay, so that's the way to look at it.
Right. I'm so sorry. There's this very interesting question even I personally would like to ask also. This question has been asked by Nikhil Saha, and he wants to know what exactly is the difference between a business plan and a business model?
Okay, that's not a very good question. So Nikhil, right? Nikhil,
Yeah.
if I can draw an analogy, the business model to a business plan is equivalent to the human heart to the human body. Okay? If your heart stops beating, if the circulation of blood stops in your body cannot survive. Much in the same way, if your model stops functioning, you can have the best business plan in the world, but it will not work. Okay? The business model is what is at the core of your business plan. It is basically how your business will function. The business plan by itself is a lot more because it gives you a lot of added information, right? Maybe, so here if I'm going to talk about a particular customer segment, the business plan will also talk about the total market, the total competition, what is the market size. So it adds, it's a lot more research document which is more in terms of helping you sell your idea to the outside world, right? Whereas business model is something that you intrinsically have to be very, very clear about. A business plan is important. It's a guiding stone, but a guiding light, sorry, but it is something that will work only if the core of it, which is the business model, is in place. So the business model is the first and absolute part which has to start functioning. The heart is the first thing that starts beating while a child is in the womb, even before the brain develops, I guess. So much in that way, even before your venture starts off, you need to get your business model in place. The plan can eventually develop, and the business plan can change as well over a period of time. But your model is something that's so core, that's so elementary, and that really makes a very, very big difference. So a lot of times there are organizations that really don't have a business plan in mind. They have a really good business model and they jump into it, and then the plan comes eventually. Okay, so the plan is more critical than the model is more critical than the plan. You need to have the model in place first before you can get onto a plan. And that's a very good question, and I think I should have addressed that somewhere in the discussion, but thanks for bringing it.
Right. Shad Ahmed wants to know what's the best way to research future market of any product design company, of a product design company. How can he create the biggest impact using this? He's creating a good impact on the software technology, using the software technology. How can he leverage this aspect of his business into a value proposition?
No, you have to help me with that question again. I just lost it somewhere in the middle.
He's a design company, software design company. Okay. He runs a software design company, and the software itself has a very good impact. They have recorded a good impact. Now he wants to know how can he incorporate that impact and highlight the value proposition.
So one of the things that we typically talk about in this is it will not directly come into the value proposition, but I think it will somewhere feature in the customer relationships. Okay, so if the product has been really doing well in the market and you've got a lot of satisfied customers, what you need to do is to be able to get some amount of buy-in from them, right? What in a very basic parlance we refer to as recommendations. So can that person recommend you across to somebody? What we say, word of mouth or a recommendation or an approach, because that in itself is a very subtle form of value proposition. Okay, the fact that you have been able to create value for somebody, and that person is happy enough or satisfied or delighted enough to be able to share with somebody else the fact that I derive value out of this and I would like you to do the same. Maybe that's one of the paths you need to look at in terms of taking this venture ahead.
Right. We'll take up the last question, though we have many, but due to time constraint, we'll take up this last question. It's asked by Ritesh Saxena. He's got a startup which is a campsite in Leh named By Camp Adventures. The business is seasonal. It runs only 4 to 5 months during the summer. So they are struggling to generate revenue model for non-season or the winter times. Is there something you would suggest where they can add or they can change in their value proposition or how they present their business idea or the business model, which can help them in generating more revenue?
Okay, so firstly, that's a very interesting thing that you're doing over there, and I'm probably going to get in touch with you sometime. But I would put it this way: there are certain businesses which are seasonal, and that's the nature of the business itself. I mean, you can't be running that business in winter and Leh for obvious reasons. So what you do is you plan your entire sales and marketing activity and all other activities associated with your particular business for those 4 to 5 months, right? That's point number one. Point number two, if you know that you have only 6 months of revenue coming into for you in a year, then make that revenue to a point which covers the cost of running the business for a year. Okay? So to give you an example, if one trip, as of now, you're charging, let's say, 1 lakh per person, okay? Can you make that 2 lakhs? Okay, I know it's not an easy jump to make, but slowly and surely can you do that? So what's happening is, if 1 lakh is the cost and you've got, let's say, 100 people you do in the 6 months, which is coming to about, what, 1 lakh into 100 is 1 crore, right? So if that's your revenue, which is sustaining you for 6 months, if that revenue will now become 2 crores, okay, it's going to take care of the entire 12 months of your running of the business. And in the same time, you can use the remaining 6 months, like I said, to actually cover all other activities associated with that particular business. So for example, if you're going to have camps starting, let's say, in April, okay, can you start advertising for training camps, which means, typically when you go for high altitude, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you go for these high altitude treks, you might need a certain amount of basic, physical fitness. So can you provide those additional services and say, irrespective of if you come to my camp or not, I can take you through a 3-week training course where, you will at least be mountain ready kind of thing, or trekking ready kind of thing. Or additionally, do some amount of sessions where you talk about the various aspects of trekking. Are there any certificate courses that, or institutes with whom you can tie up, right, to deliver some kind of certificate courses or some kind of value delivery courses to these people who might eventually want to come back to you at the end of the 6 months when summer really is there, to then start becoming a part of the actual camps that you have actually. So the idea is, it is a natural constraint for you and you can't do anything about it, but what can you do in terms of peripheral or associated activities that will help you to make those 6 months even better? That's the focus, so that's how you need to approach that particular challenge. Hello? Hello?
Hear me?
Hello? Actually, I think...
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah. The connection went bad. That's all.
So did you get the response?
Yeah.
Was I able to complete the response?
Yeah.
Okay.
Though there are many more questions to be answered, but due to time constraint, we will be stopping here. But Professor Soumya, this was a very interesting session. The attendees have asked numerous questions we couldn't answer. Thank you so much for the session. Thank you all attendees for participating in the webinar. We are really glad that the questions kept coming in. If you found the session interesting, tweet us at NEN India. The recorded version of the webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/eClub soon. Please do send in your feedbacks and suggestions at eclub@nenglobal.org. also, if you found the session interesting, feel free to blog or post about it. You can reach Professor Soumya Chakraborty at Soumo, SHOUMO This is CHAKRABORTY @gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much and have a nice evening. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.